That is some cover, huh? There was this brief window of time where HAL was using models for their covers and advertisements. And while I think the one they did for Air Fortress looks pretty neat, this one does not. That guy has some giant hands and forearms. FireBAM is the second collaboration between HAL Laboratory and Live Planning. Live Planning provided some assistance in game development, but shortly after this they changed their name to Kaze, and under that name they produced some interesting titles that you might have heard of, like Heiankyo Alien for the Game Boy, Habarenbo Tengu, and Tenjin Kaisen, or Mercenary Force. The plot of FireBAM is that within the Empire of Melnibone, there was a village who was responsible for maintaining the fire that unfroze the continent of Hyboria. Some bug demons weren't very happy about this, so they kidnapped most of that village, scattering them throughout the worlds, and transformed the two village elders into monsters. Only the son of the elders, Bam, was left, which means it's his job to rebuild the village, defeat the insect demons, and save the fire. So I guess in this game, Elric and Conan are somewhere just over there, not doing anything while Bam has to fix the world. You start the game at your house, where you have your parents transformed into those monsters. Your mother restores your health to full, and your father will save the game. All of the text in FireBAM is in English, so this is a very approachable game even if you don't speak Japanese. FireBAM is played from a side view where B attacks and A jumps, and the very first thing you're going to notice when you start playing is that the movement is a little odd. Bam can run extremely fast, but it takes him a while to build up speed, and initially you can't jump very high unless you're running at full speed. You also can't turn around in the air at first. Now this isn't all bad. Bam walks around with his sword out in front of him, so he can just run into enemies and destroy them, assuming they're weak and aren't attacking. On the other hand, you can just hold down B and he'll auto-attack the entire time. It'll give you a little bit more coverage, and it's probably how you want to approach things. If you hit up an attack, you'll spin your weapon around in a circle, and of course you can crouch and attack. You start the game with a puny knife, a shield that barely blocks anything, and shoes that don't help at all. Naturally, you'll need to improve all of your equipment. For the most part, you'll be buying new things in shops, but at the start of the game, everybody's missing. So your very first task is to leave town and enter the forest through this door, and then look for the entrance to a dimensional corridor that leads to a boss. In the forest, you'll find 4 types of doors. The one with the animal face just goes back to your village. The ones with the closed eye symbol above them are shops, and the ones that are giant pillars with an orb above them are those dimensional corridors. Now there is an order that you are supposed to do things in. And if you do things out of order, there's a good chance you'll encounter something that's just too tough for you to take on. Unless you're following a guide, this is going to take a lot of trial and error for you. The dimensional corridors are high-speed auto-scrolling segments. The passage just zips by, and you have to make it a certain distance down these. Enemies pop out randomly, and it can be very difficult to do anything about them. And because you're always zipping along at high speed here, if you do manage to destroy an enemy, you're going to have a hard time collecting whatever they drop. Enemies can drop 3 different kinds of things. First, they can drop fire, which is the currency. And that comes in collections of 1, 3, or 10. If you get a pot with an R or an L on it, then you'll recover a bit of health. The pot with the A on it destroys all enemies on the screen, and B gives you a barrier that makes you invincible for a few seconds. If you manage to navigate far enough down that dimensional corridor and reach the boss, then you're in for a rather annoying fight. The biggest problem with FireBAM is that the hitboxes for enemies is way larger than they appear on the screen. And if you get within that hitbox, say because the enemy moves on top of you, then you're pretty much stuck in place taking damage over and over again. Most bosses just charge in and sit on you, so that makes it considerably worse. On the other hand, if you're fighting the correct boss, they'll probably go down in only 3 or 4 hits. It's just connecting with those hits is easier said than done. If you defeat a boss, then they'll drop a really big pot, and that'll give you 100 fire plus extend your life bar. Defeating a boss causes the world to change, new people will appear in town, or the forest map could switch up. Something to be aware of is that you'll see spots where you've entered the dimensional corridor before, and there's another entrance there later. If you can re-enter it, then it's a different stage. Usually what you'll want to do after making progress is head right back to town so you can save at your house. And of course when those shops show up, you'll need to buy things. Something important to know about Fire Bam is that a lot of the equipment is useful at particular times, so you'll want to switch things in and out. I can get a big shield that will block almost any projectile, or I could get a smaller shield that will only block some, but it fires a weak long-range attack. Similarly, I can upgrade my starting dagger to a nice big sword. That one's much more effective if you let it sit out in front of you. Or I could use boomerangs that throw out and come back, but don't do as much damage. And the boots all have unique special effects. The only ones that I got let me jump higher so I didn't have to build up speed before making a good leap. There's also special items that offer some kind of ability that's used automatically, like wings that will let you turn around in a jump, or a potion that will recover health when your bar runs out. Grinding up money to afford all of that equipment can take a while, but it's not that tough, especially if you're exploring and trying things. If you continue after you get a game over, you still retain all of your money, so you're always making some progress. There's one more type of structure you can enter in the forest. If you enter the doors in the castle, then you go to a dungeon. And here you wander around freely, going up and down elevators, trying to find a path to a boss. There's no special treasures hidden in the dungeon, just health and keys. Otherwise, these are strictly mazes. That's how the game progresses. You find the right passage or dungeon, kill the boss at the end, that unlocks the next passage or dungeon, as well as releasing some shopkeepers who will get you some good stuff. And then you repeat that until you're at the end of the game. In Japan, Fire Bam is considered a bit of a cult classic. Not many people know about it. The game apparently sold extremely poorly due to being on the Disk System, but those who do know about Fire Bam seem to enjoy it quite a bit. And I can't say that I really agree there. There are some good things here. Even in the time I had to play, I made quite a bit of progress, beat up several bosses, got a bunch of upgrades, but I really didn't care for how Bam moved. Having high-speed action is neat, but you can't really react to anything. And the background designs in those corridors is so noisy, I have trouble telling what's going on in them. Finally, those giant invisible hitboxes that chew through your life bar make any kind of combat harder than it should be. My feelings come down to Fire Bam is interesting, but it doesn't really work for me. On the other hand, I can see why some people really liked it. You can see bits of other cult classics mixed in here. So maybe after you've played Quintet's action RPGs about rebuilding the world, and gotten your fill of Golvelius's shoot-'em-up style stages, then you'd want to turn to Fire Bam for your next fix.